You're not cold. The room is warm. Nothing is wrong. But the song reaches a certain note, or the movie hits a certain line, and a wave moves across your arms. The hair stands up. Your skin prickles into 1,000 tiny bumps. For a few seconds, you feel something roll up the back of your neck like a slow electric tide. And then it's gone. You weren't cold. You weren't scared. So what exactly just happened to your body? The honest answer is that an alarm system millions of years old just went off for no reason, and it tells you something strange and a little wonderful about the animal you actually are. Let's start with what a goosebump physically is, because it's weirder than you think. Under your skin, attached to your hair follicles, there are tiny muscles. They're microscopic, and you have them all over your body, each one anchored to a little cluster of hairs. When one of these muscles contracts, it pulls the hairs upright and tugs the skin around them into a small bump. Do that across your whole arm at once, and you get the puckered, plucked bird look that gave Goosebumps their name. This response has an actual scientific name. It's called piloerection. And here's the first clue that something odd is going on. You are almost never in charge of it. For nearly everyone, you can't make goosebumps happen just by deciding to. They fire automatically through the same nervous system that controls your heartbeat and your breathing, the part of you that runs without asking permission. Goosebumps aren't really a feeling. They're a reflex. So the real question isn't what they are, it's what they're for. And to answer that, you have to look at an animal that still has what you lost. Picture a cat that just spotted a dog. In an instant, its fur stands straight up, its tail puffs into a bottle brush, and it doubles in apparent size. That's piloerection, the exact same muscles, doing the exact same thing your arm just did during the song. But on the cat, it works. It works in two ways. The first is warmth. When an animal with a thick coat raises its fur, it traps a layer of air against the skin, like pulling on an insulating blanket. A cold animal fluffs up to survive. The second is intimidation. A frightened or cornered animal raises its fur to look bigger and more dangerous than it really is, hoping to convince a predator that this is not worth the trouble. Bigger looks stronger. Stronger looks like a bad meal. For millions of years, in millions of furry bodies, this was a genuinely useful piece of equipment. Warmth and a bluff built into the skin. And then came us. Somewhere along the human story, our ancestors lost most of their fur. We became the strange naked ape, smooth-skinned in a world of furry cousins. But evolution is a hoarder. It almost never deletes the old machinery just because the situation changed. It leaves it running in the background, even after the reason for it is gone. So, we kept the muscles. We kept the wiring. We kept the entire ancient reflex that fluffs up a coat to trap heat and scare off predators. We just lost the coat. This is the part that's quietly hilarious if you sit with it. Right now, on your bare arm, you have tiny muscles whose original job was to raise fur you no longer have. When you get cold and goosebumps appear, your body is faithfully trying to fluff a luxurious coat that vanished more than 1,000,000 years ago. It is pulling on a blanket that isn't there. The reflex still fires perfectly. It just no longer does anything at all. You are, in this exact moment, an animal puffing up to look bigger with nothing to puff. But warmth and bluffing don't explain the song. You weren't cold when your arm prickled, and you certainly weren't trying to scare anyone. So why does a piece of music, or a memory, or a line in a film set off a survival reflex built for predators and snow? To understand that, you have to know which part of you is pulling the trigger. Goosebumps are wired into your sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight system, the ancient emergency circuit that floods your body with adrenaline when it senses a threat. Racing heart, widened eyes, raised hair. All of it is the same package, the body bracing for danger. The hair raising was always meant to be part of a threat response. But here's the catch. That system is old, and it's fast, and it is not very smart. It evolved to react before you can think, because an animal that pauses to analyze a rustle in the grass is an animal that gets eaten, so it fires on a hair trigger. and it cannot always tell the difference between a real threat and a powerful feeling. A soaring piece of music, a breathtaking view, the swell of a crowd singing together, a wave of sudden grief or awe or beauty. To your rational mind, these are obviously not dangerous. But to that fast, ancient, emotional part of your brain, a surge of intense feeling looks an awful lot like a surge of importance. Something big is happening, something that matters. And when something big and important happens, the old system does what it has always done. It activates, it braces, it raises the fur that isn't there. That prickle down your arms during the perfect song is your fight or flight system being beautifully, harmlessly fooled. Scientists even have a name for this specific version. When goosebumps come from emotion rather than cold or fear, they call it frisson, aesthetic chills, and it turns out to be far more than a leftover glitch. Because when researchers look at what's happening in the brain during one of these chills, they don't just see the alarm system, they see the reward system lighting up too, the same circuits involved in pleasure, motivation, and craving. Brain imaging shows that frisson is tied to dopamine, the chemistry of reward and anticipation. And in study after study, the chill tends to arrive at a very particular moment. Not at the climax of the music, but in the instant just before it. The build, the held breath, the split second where your brain leans forward, predicting that something wonderful is about to land. Your goosebumps, in other words, are riding the wave of anticipation. They're the physical echo of your brain reaching toward a peak that hasn't happened yet. And there's one more strange wrinkle. Remember how goosebumps are supposed to be involuntary, something that happens to you rather than something you do? That's true for almost everyone, but not quite everyone. A tiny fraction of people, maybe 1 in 1,000 or so, can trigger goosebumps on command, rolling a wave of them down their arms just by thinking about it. Scientists call it voluntary piloerection, and they genuinely don't understand how it works, since it shouldn't be possible to consciously fire an automatic system like this. But here's the detail that fits this whole story almost too perfectly. When researchers studied these people, they found they tended to share one personality trait above all others: openness, a heightened receptiveness to new ideas, to imagination, and especially to art and beauty. The people most able to summon this ancient reflex on purpose are the ones most moved by the beautiful things that set it off in the rest of us. So look at what this ancient reflex has become. It started as a way to survive the cold. Then it became a way to bluff a predator. For most of life's history, it was pure machinery: warmth, threat, survival, cold and fear, and nothing else. And then it ended up here, in a warm room, in a hairless animal, set off not by snow or by teeth, but by a song, by beauty, by the sheer overwhelming experience of being moved by something. The fur is gone, the predators are gone. The cold that shaped this reflex is, for most of us, a thermostat away. But the wiring stayed, and somewhere along the way, it got pointed at something new. The same circuit that once braced your ancestors against a winter night now fires when a melody is too beautiful to bear. You can't take credit for it, and for almost all of us, you can't fake it. For most people, a goosebump can't be willed into existence any more than our ancestors could will their fur to stand. It happens to you from underneath, from the oldest part of the machine. So the next time something moves you so much that your skin rises in a wave, a song, a memory, a moment that hits harder than it has any right to, remember what that actually is: a piece of survival equipment older than language, built for a body covered in fur, for a world full of cold and teeth. It has outlived the fur, it has outlived the danger, and it is still here, still firing, reaching up out of the deep past to do the one thing it was never built for: to mark the moments that move you most.